wrapping up Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun from Dogakobo, and it is streaming on Crunchyroll. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say, here and now, it's the best show of the season.
I mean, I'd have to look back on everything that I watched, but this was definitely something that I never was like a drag to watch. It was always something I looked forward to.
Al, that is not the enthusiasm that this show deserves. I mean, it was hilarious. You know, we have this we get a little bit of the manga industry, but then we have like this romantic comedy, but the way that the romance and the comedy is done is that it's, you know, more like 80% comedy, and then there's that little bit of romance that you kind of have to accept that there's not gonna be very much forward movement until it's like, okay, Nozaki-kun, this series is gonna be over in like, you know, we're ending the manga in 2 volumes, so now's the time to actually have relationship movement.
I feel like the problem with that stuff is it can easily overwhelm the comedy, which I feel is what really is the draw of this series. And I do know that certain people are like, oh man, it's too sitcom-y. But I don't mind that. Once again, I love Hayate and the such, and Rumukyo Takahashi stuff. So I feel like as long as your comedy is strong, I don't mind you being sitcom-y.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those shows that's like just a great topper to everything else that you're watching. I haven't laughed so hard during a comedy so consistently since I think Daily Lives of High School Boys. I mean, just like making me laugh so hard that we had to like stop, you know, get it all out, rewind a little because I missed something. It's just so strong. And, you know, it's almost one of those shows where you watch an episode and you laugh so hard, like that episode with the dating sim scenario.
Just their weird, like, my god, best friend Kun, he's the one you really love.
OTP!
Why don't you realize that everything he does for you, it's really because he's secretly in love with you.
And so, like, you know, that episode, I remember it so vividly, and then you were like, how is it ever going to be better than an episode? But it's every time just came out swinging. I loved the side cast a lot. A series built on a lot of misunderstandings and miscommunication. Like the guy that's in love with Seo, who is like this horrible girl, and he's like can't even admit to himself that he's in love with her, but he's in love with her alter ego that he doesn't know is her. And then like there's that part where he's like trying to find out about the girl who sings so beautifully, and then he accidentally overhears Kashima singing and thinks that it's her, and it feels bad for her because she's such a horrible singer when really she's the beautiful voice. It just has all of that every time. I did get a little mad at the end of the last episode because there's this part where, you know, Sakura sort of gets up the nerve again. You know, we started off with her failed attempts at confessing to Nozaki, as though we of course end in a very similar fashion of her trying to like get it out. And then there's that, oh, we can't hear what they say, like there's fireworks, so Nozaki's talking, but we don't hear anything. And I was like, fuck you, if you think that's an okay way to end this, I will kill you. But then, like goes through some other characters, and then after the credits it comes back to that sequence. So
it was a good place to stop if they don't ever have any more, or at least if they go on break for a while, because I know a lot of times, especially with certain other series, they have a great finale episode and then they have that weird like bonus episode and I was a little worried that the series would be like that because it was obviously still ongoing. So I wondered if they'd have like a finale episode and then what? Where did this could have been any other episode. But yeah, they like picked a point that was like, all right, that was a nice place to end.
Well, yeah, I think it wasn't as hard with this one because there's not a real overarching story. Like you described it as a sitcom. So there's not a huge overarching story. And all of the relationships, as the viewer, you know exactly who's gonna... There's not like a, oh man, who's it gonna be? Are they ever gonna get together? Like I said, the only obstacle to people getting together is that it's not the end of the series. It's like, okay, we know how all of this is gonna go. It's just won't happen until the end. But it's not even like School Rumble where there's like some, like, quadrangle going on and you actually don't know. Like, because I feel like that's a decent comparison just because it's so comedy and it's sort of one of those status quo series, but...
Kate, all I can think back is not traumatic flashbacks of vitriol of the shipping wars during School Rumble. And then when he finally ended it and, like, gave, oh man, so much bitter salt.
Exactly, but we don't even have that. It's very clear, like, this pair, this. Like, it's already, everything's already in place. So, but I thought that the end of the episode did hint that maybe, because there was, like, a new character that they focused on a character a little too long in the crowd, and I was like, okay, that's probably a new character. So that could just be, oh, well, in the manga, you know, there's gonna be a new character. Or it could be like, we're hoping there'll be more anime, so...
One point that I think came up, and I don't even remember what our final conclusion, so I might as well ask you. They do, in this series, of course, write a shoujo manga. And I feel like a lot of anime fans are kind of definitely... Shoujo anime is probably usually their weakest, except for, you know, certain exceptions. But if there's usually one type of anime people are weakest on, it's either usually sports anime or shoujo anime, and shoujo manga doubly so. How do you feel that someone who hasn't, unlike you, and to a much lesser degree me, hasn't read a decent amount of shoujo manga, how much do you think they would get out of this series? Because I don't feel like it depends on it, but it does come up, like, at least once an episode, them looking at some shoujo trope.
I think that the extreme that they take everything, you don't need to know. I think, if anything, a lot of that comedy centers on being a mangaka. I mean, yes, there's a lot of shoujo stuff, but... I feel like they explain it just enough that you don't need to know anything. Like, when Nozaki is constantly throughout this series, like, kind of being intrusive into people's space or people's, like, confessions and stuff because he's, like, writing reference notes for his manga. Like, you don't need to know anything to find that hilarious. Or... in the last episode, when Hori, who draws backgrounds, is like, I'm gonna take pictures at the festival, and he's like crawling on the ground. He's like, Mommy, we'll fall over here, and will be the angle she's looking at, and things like that. So, I don't know, I don't think that...
I did also like that. And here's where the wandering rapist will all hit on her.
In the back alley of this, like, food cart. Exactly. So I feel like, I mean, maybe you get more of a laugh out of it because you know how prevalent these scenarios could be, but I don't think you wouldn't find it funny otherwise.
I just thought it was worth bringing up because I do feel like it is kind of, if anything, Annie Twitter's and a lot of other people's kind of weak point.
And I love it, the spotlight on, like, the editors and how that relationship is so weird and how it works. And I like how Nozaki is always kind of messing around and, like, drawing, like, the craziest thing and is submitting it. And like I said, I don't feel like it has too much centered on, like, it being shoujo. I think it adds some things, but...
I do wonder... how many of those characters are based on actual working mangaka? Like the one editor that Nozaki hates, who, like, insists that all his artists throw tanuki and everything. I wonder if there is some guy who, it's obviously not tanuki, but has some similar penchant for forcing the artists who work with him to force in something. If you were in the same industry, like, I know that guy who they're talking about.
Yeah, I liked how much about manga and working in manga you actually learn about this series, especially in some of the earlier episodes when you're first meeting characters, because you watch them do the, like, screen tones, and then when Hori shows up and he does the backgrounds, and, like, just kind of the process is obviously exaggerated or simplified, but, like, I like that you kind of get education a little bit, but then in the greater comedy scheme, so...
Yeah, it's just a fun series.
Fantastic! It was so great.
I mean, if you haven't checked it out, at least watch an episode or two and just kind of...
No, watch the whole thing. Al's being so wishy-washy on this particular thing. No, it was the best moment every week. It left me smiling, and I can't think of anything I enjoyed more for the whole season.
I think that's a pretty strong endorsement. All right, see you guys next time.